Speaker indicated in his presentation that in addition to introducing Professor Mohammed Jahed, who is here present with us, that Professor Mohammed will tell us a bit more about the functioning of the office. I will now invite Professor Mohammed to make his presentation to us. Over to you, Professor Mohammed.
Honourable Speaker, Mr Sisulu, Honourable Chair of the NCLP, Mr Mahlangu, Honourable Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation will focus basically, as Speaker has indicated, around information sharing on the progress that we have achieved thus far with the establishment and the development of the Parliamentary Budget Office. I will be supplementing a lot of what Speaker has touched on, but I will go a bit into detail into these areas. In terms of the contents of my presentation, if we can just get it up very quickly. Is there, Sipo? Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I think the technical issues are creeping in again. Any luck? I need the presentation, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have copies. Okay, I will then proceed without the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation contents consists of the following areas. I will address the Parliamentary Budget Office in context, which I think Honourable Speaker has done very eloquently. We will be talking about the implementation of the Money Bills Amendment Procedures and Related Act of 2009, fiscal oversight and what we mean by it. Then we will talk about how we undertook some research, extensive research into establishing models for the Parliamentary Budget Office, and as speakers indicated, how it specifically links to the South African situation, the functions of the Budget Office and how we see it structured, and also some of the issues in terms of going forward with respect to how we further want to implement the Budget Office. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the Money Bills and Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Act, the objective of the Act was to amend money bills that was before Parliament and for norms and standards of the Money Bills and Related Act at provincial level as well to be amended. This gives effect to Section 77(3) of the Constitution, and Section 15, very specifically of the Act, talks about establishment of the Budget Office. The objective of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and I think this is crucial because the functions are set out very clearly in the Act, is that the Money Bills Act mainly is to support Parliament to undertake research and analysis for committees around the following areas: to ensure review and analysis of information, to provide advice and analysis on proposed amendments, to look at reports tabled and adopted in the House with budgetary implications, to keep abreast of policy debates, and to address unfunded mandates. So these are the core functions that have been outlined in the Act, and basically, as you notice, these are functions that will address information needs of Parliament to address certain issues around the budget, as we've indicated in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of work has been undertaken previously through the Act. The first phase of implementation of the Act consisted of establishment of the Finance and Appropriation Committees in the two houses. There was also the process of considering and adopting the fiscal framework, which is a critical innovation, which has resulted from the Act itself. The process of compiling budgetary review and recommendation reports. Next slide, Sipo. Can we go to the new slide? Yeah, this is the first phase of the establishment. The process of compiling the BRR reports, as Honourable Speaker has indicated, and then, of course, the response by the Minister of Finance to the recommendations that are tabled by the House. So already a lot of work has implemented since the Act has been promulgated, and a lot of the critical issues in terms of implementing the Act has started. The second phase of the Act and as honourable speakers indicated, was that study visits were undertaken to countries to look at best practice lessons of experience. There was extensive research undertaken not only by DBSA but by Parliament itself and some of the researchers in Parliament. And of course there was a seconded specialist to look at implementation of the Act itself in the second phase. Ladies and gentlemen, I think what is important for us to notice is that fiscal oversight is a critical function. And the Budget Office does nothing more than provide technical information and support to Parliament to undertake its function in terms of providing fiscal oversight. It does not intend to replace any committees, institutions, etc., but is purely a technical arm to provide information, support, review, analysis to Parliament. So, for example, what we've undertaken to ensure is that fiscal oversight in its true sense is undertaken. And as you know, it's important to ensure that there's adequate stewardship over public resources and the efficient allocation of resources and service delivery. What's important to note as well, ladies and gentlemen, is that the following key areas of fiscal oversight is critical. Fiscal oversight, as we all know, is about government expenditure, it's about government borrowing, it's about taxation, and fundamentally, fourthly, very importantly, about oversight over regulation. And this, I think, is a critical issue that we need to take cognizance of as we exercise the process of fiscal oversight. The reason for fiscal oversight is also critical in terms of shaping how the Parliamentary Budget Office will establish. And there are basically two critical imperatives for fiscal oversight. The first is that the fact that the country's budgeting system is the key for obtaining the objectives of the country. Fiscal, monetary policy, macroeconomic policy objectives. Of course, we all know that the economic success of any institution is the ability, and government, is to ensure that government has the ability to deploy resources with maximum effect. So the age-old economic problem of scarce resources with maximum and massive needs is a critical issue, which is critical in considering the budget and the Budget Office. It's also important for us to know that the budget has three basic functions. It's to maintain fiscal discipline, to ensure allocative efficiency, to ensure delivery efficiency. And these, I think, are the critical reasons why a technical capacity for Parliament is necessary in terms of supporting these areas of fiscal oversight. Ladies and gentlemen, very briefly, internationally, there's a growing number of budget offices that have been established. And as we notice, with more democratic governments being established, budget offices are coming online. Does not mean that you need budget offices to be a democracy, but it does indicate to you that this is an important phenomenon. We've also noticed internationally that generally legislatures lack technical analytical capacity to provide proper oversight in this regard. And of course, as we know, limited legislative oversight leads to poor fiscal outcomes. And therefore, budget officers and the establishment of budget officers has indicated and proved that the ability of legislators improve as budget officers are established. Of course, we also know that it has improved their abilities, that is, legislatures' abilities to exercise proper oversight over fiscal outcomes of any country. Ladies and gentlemen, internationally, and here's a common trend that has happened, what do budget officers do? And these are four key areas that all budget officers internationally you find undertaking. They provide evidence-based budget analysis, they do economic forecasts, they look at fiscal projections, they examine proposals, and they look at the impact of alternative spending patterns. And I think this is critical for us to know in terms of the questions that we will raise later as well, in terms of the functions of budget officers. These are technical functions which are performed. For South Africa, very specifically, what we had to take into context, next slide, what we had to take into context was, for example, how does it specifically address the South African situation? And as we all know, very briefly again, the lessons for South Africa that are critical is that there's a need for budget transparency to enhance the credibility of the budget process, increasing accountability, of course, discipline in public spending, and the necessary, very importantly, to capacitate Parliament to exercise its oversight function. And this is the critical function with budget officers. Ladies and gentlemen, through a lot of research, and again I'm presenting to you a very brief session and version of the work we've undertaken, in terms of the South African situation, in terms of how the functions of the Budget Office will operate, we've identified three main streams of work and functions. And we've divided them into the economic stream, the public finance stream, and the public policy stream. And as you notice as well, without going into detail in the very specific functions, is again highly technical support functions to our committees, to our members of Parliament, to exercise oversight with proper information, support, and technical information in this respect. Ladies and gentlemen, basically this is how we see an interaction. I know it's a very busy slide, but very briefly, how we see the interaction between the Parliamentary Budget Office and internally with respect to committees. The Budget Office will service all committees in Parliament. It will provide support to the Finance and Appropriations Committees, but it will try and assist and support and capacitate all committees in Parliament to undertake and to have the necessary ability to undertake technical and relevant support information. How the Budget Office will interface with external stakeholders, and again, please remember the context that I've put the Budget Office in, is that the Budget Office provides nothing more than technical support to Parliament, to its committees, and in this respect, it will interact with government institutions, with stakeholders, with civil society, with NGOs, academic institutions, to source information out there, to get the best practice, to undertake, to provide the best technical information that is available, that the Budget Office will collate and then provide and feedback through to Parliament. And as I've indicated, to the presiding officers and the committees of the NCOP and the NA. So very specifically, there will be interaction with civil society, but in the sense of collating and collecting technical information, which will give Parliament broad abilities to generate information, to develop independent and objective information to provide through to Parliament and its committees in this respect. Ladies and gentlemen, our organogram, as you know, structure follows function, and as honourable speakers indicated, we see a structure of about 12 people at this stage, not very big. In terms of the three streams, in terms of the three functions that we've indicated, and we intend that this structure will start providing the necessary technical support to our committees to exercise proper oversight in this respect. The reporting line, the Budget Office will report directly to the Executive Authority, and here when we talk about Executive Authority, it's the Honourable Speaker and the Honourable Chair of the NCOP, and it will account directly to the Executive Authority through very specifically determined key performance-based areas and HR review mechanisms that we have specifically developed in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I take this opportunity to thank you again for the opportunity to listen to the progress that we've achieved thus far with the establishment of the Parliamentary Budget Office. Thank you very much.